And welcome into the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. I have no equipment to complain about today. I have nothing Nick's done that's pissed me off yet. So I got to say, can we just have normal freaking weather one day? Like we have Arctic weather forever, and then it's going to pour rain. And today I drove through fog that like John Carpenter would have stopped shooting on the movie The Fog today with the fog that was in Nolensville. Like I was going like 8 miles an hour.
That's a great pull from you.
Thank you. So other than that, good. Looking forward to meeting the new Titans head coach today and moving forward with things.
You'll be happy to know that I'm headed for very normal weather.
I know. I know. Now, how hot is it down there?
It's gonna be 85
next
couple days.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well timed, man. Because actually, talking to my grandma, Phyllis Pratt, friend of the show, the other day, like they were actually getting to freezing.
Yeah,
on the Gulf side, which is
Things shut down there when that happens.
Yes, so you're getting 85. That's beautiful.
Nick Keyser, how we doing?
I'm good. It did feel like Halloween this morning. I mean, Joe's not wrong. The fog was very thick, and apparently supposed to be foggy until 9, but here I am talking about weather. But anyway, it's all good. No, I'm doing well. I thought you were on vacation mode already, so there's that.
Yeah, by the way, Nick had all the stuff printed out for me because he thought you were actually gone today. He didn't know you were doing the show today.
Yeah, Nick totally thought I'd left already, even though I told him yesterday I was doing the show from home. But he thought I'd left.
Well, look, we can't blame a guy who listens to like 5% of the show anyway.
That is true. That is true.
What is he supposed to be following along with our lives? Come on.
Is very true.
He's in there doing something now. He doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care. It's all done at this point. We got a lot to get to on the program here today. Some news from the Titans yesterday that we're going to spend a lot of time on today. Obviously, the hiring of Brian Callahan. He's got his introductory press conference coming up later today over at St. Thomas Sports Park. Also, a promotion for Rand Carthon as well involved in all this as well. So we're going to get hot and heavy into that here in just a few minutes. Todd Richards, Predators assistant coach, joining us at 7:15. You'll hear from Patrick Willis, legendary Tennessean and Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist, coming up at 7:30. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, talking Titans and all things NFL from 8 to 8:30 today here on the program. Joe, we begin with the news yesterday for the Titans. So as predicted on our program yesterday, 9:17 a.m. was the time that I threw out there that the Titans would come out and make it official that Brian Callahan was the coach. I believe, Joe, that I saw the tweet roll across there at 9:14. So just a few minutes off from when the Titans actually made it official in the immediate aftermath of our show. But we now know who has final say. It is Rand Carthon. He gets a promotion throughout all this. He has final say not only over the roster, Joe, but also final say over the coaching staff, which I thought was an interesting way to put it yesterday as well. What did you make of, I guess, the official hiring of Brian Callahan, and the more newsworthy event of the day yesterday is what it means for Rand Carthon now with a much bigger role and seemingly much bigger influence as it relates to the roster, coaching staff, all those things?
Yeah, well, there's clarity. There's still some confusion, but there's more clarity, certainly. And so, first of all, credit to Amy Adams Strunk for following through on what she said. I saw John Glennon tweet yesterday, this is the official announcement of the coach, but it feels like the Titans have basically like overshadowed it with the Rand stuff, which is true, but to me that's the way you do this. You do it yesterday with the release, and then today you can kind of resume, here's the new coach. Let's talk about the new coach and the football and all this. Not that that'll be the only topic, but I think the confusion is like a little bit of like Chad Brinker and his title and all this stuff. I mean, I think that needs to be clarified a little bit. And I know people got mad at Jared yesterday for, suggesting that as president, he's Rand's boss, but like in a lot of companies that those titles, that's whatever department you're in, that those mean something. You know what I mean? Like it's Rand's executive vice president, Chad Brinker's president. I understand he's president of a different division, but I mean, I think that would be good to clarify. It does seem that they're sort of equals now, which is interesting, but still, Rand is the chooser of players. He is the empowered GM. So there can be no question now. We don't have to next year. When like we were this year, Andre Dillard, who really liked him? Whose fault really is it? Who has more power? How's it going? What are the conversations like? When it comes down to it, the buck stops with Rand Carthon on choosing of players, and that's nice clarity to have. And I do think this represents also a moment to say, all right, I don't think his first year was disastrous. Again, whoever did what, said what, it's still his first year as GM. It wasn't disastrous. It wasn't great. It was probably, I would say it was definitely not good overall free agency, and I think potentially quite good draft. But now, here we go. It's a totally different situation. There's no Mike Vrabel to dance around. There's no, let's try to figure this relationship out. He hired the coach. He led the search for the coach. He's picking the players. So, in a way, this is kind of a new start of the Rand Carthon era.
Yeah, certainly. Who's in charge of final say of the roster? Like, all that stuff's gone at this point. And it's the Rand Carthon show. And like you said, like Rand Carthon last year, who picked Andre Dillard? How much of it was Vrabel? How much of it was Carthon? The draft part of it. As you pointed out in your story, Ryan Cowden running the draft board doesn't necessarily mean that Ryan Cowden was the one picking the players for the Titans in the draft last year. But now none of that matters anymore. Like, it's the Rand Carthon show. I, for one, Joe, am glad that after today, the final say conversation can permanently be retired, because I was growing very tired of the final say conversation. Oh. So I'm glad that Amy Adams Strunk followed through on what she said she would do, and she laid that out pretty clearly yesterday when it comes to who that responsibility is going to fall on. Here was the statement from Amy Adams Strunk talking about Rand Carthon. Quote, "Over the past year, Rand has impressed me and our staff with his innovative approach to roster building. Rand's exceptional reputation around the league as a talent evaluator and culture builder was a clear competitive advantage during last year's free agency and draft process, as well as our recent search for a head coach. Simply put, Rand Carthon makes the Tennessee Titans a destination for the league's top talent. By expanding his role to include full roster control and oversight of the coaching staff, our organization will now benefit more completely from Rand's unique ability to build and lead a championship caliber football team." That was the statement from Amy Adams Strunk. We'll get to one part in particular of that statement that's a little bit of a head scratcher coming up here in just a few minutes, but pretty clear that right now Amy Adams Strunk's got full confidence in Rand Carthon.
Yeah, and I think some may have expected, if you're talking 49ers, and we talked about this, okay? If you're talking 49ers model, then does that mean you're going to get a coach and you're saying, okay, and you are ultimately in control of the 53, and personnel matters. That's what the 49ers do. But as we've also talked about, Kyle Shanahan's a different situation than Brian Callahan. Kyle Shanahan, when he got that job, Super Bowl OC, second job as an OC in the league, had been an OC for several years, calling plays, all that stuff, and he was a very coveted head coaching candidate. Not that Callahan, he's been a candidate the last couple of years for different jobs, but I think everything that the Titans have gone through, I think it would have been really weird to then not do it this way. We had this argument yesterday on a big win for me on Jared versus Joe.
Yes.
All the things that got us to this point here, wondering if what they're going to do with that. To me, it would have been weird to then not have Rand Carthon have final say. I think that's just the natural progression of things. Now, I think in some situations, a coach maybe has more control, but I think they're probably going to say that C word today again. And as tiresome as that is, along with the phrase final say, that is what it has to be in every single organization. But the clarity's good. I think that's the big thing. Clarity. We don't have to talk about it. There shouldn't be a single question about it today, right? And there's no reason to. Unless Amy Adams Strunk is taking questions, and I guess it's like, why did you decide this? But I don't think she's going to take questions. So that's nice to get past it. One thing I've learned about through this thing, Rob, there's still a lot of teams out there where people don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams still we would prefer to keep it that way, right? Like there's some teams where you do know and there's clarity, but there's a lot of teams where it's kind of like, no one's really defined it yet. And I think it's like basically it's a lot easier to do that if you're having success and harder to do that if you're struggling.
Yeah, no question about it. We're off and running today here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll take your thoughts, 615-737-1025, our phone number. What did you make of Amy Adams' Strunk's statement yesterday? With a promotion for Rand Carthon, he's got final say over the roster. He's got final say over the coaching staff. And there was one part in particular of the statement that we just read that is a little bit of a head scratcher. We'll get into that coming up next as well. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Robbie Stanley here, and when it comes to the NFL playoffs, you've got to win one game at a time. But when you bet the NFL playoffs on FanDuel, one game can mean a whole lot of wins. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, has all your favorite bets like money line and the point spread, plus all sorts of different prop bets as well. I like Christian McCaffrey as an anytime touchdown scorer against the Detroit Lions. He might even score two, but you could take it any way you want to take it. Right now, every day there's an NFL playoff game. FanDuel giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay. That means when you combine all your bets for a chance at a bigger payday, you'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win. Just visit FanDuel.com/Rob if you already have an account. Makes every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Joe, we read the statement from Amy Adams Strunk yesterday regarding Rand Carthon and his promotion. There's one part of that that's a little bit strange that stands out. I know to you, it was one of the first things you noticed and made me kind of raise an eyebrow too. Quote, simply put, Rand Carthon makes the Tennessee Titans a destination for the league's top talent. By expanding his role to include full roster control and oversight of the coaching staff, our organization will now benefit more completely from Rand's unique ability to build and lead championship caliber football team. So it makes it sound like to me in this statement from Amy Adams Strunk, Joe, that she believes Rand Carthon is going to be an attractive draw for like free agents and players to come here to Nashville. To which as you brought up in our off the air discussion yesterday, a general manager makes a team attractive to come join. Like we hear that about coaches who have a direct impact of what happens on the field on game day. We certainly hear that about quarterbacks and other players. But a general manager, I thought that was a pretty interesting statement from Amy Adams Strunk.
I mean, what? What are we talking about? I don't I don't mean to pick on young Sam Phelan. I'm probably going to pick on him because he beat me in the Titans Media League championship game.
Probably so.
But he tweeted, I got to find his tweet because he and I went back and forth on this. And basically like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, how? I've never heard of such a thing. Now, someone did throw at me John Elway. So is that Peyton Manning? Did Peyton Manning go to the Denver Broncos because he's like, ooh, man, I want to play for John Elway? I mean, I'm sure John Elway, as I responded to this Vols Twitter person,
yeah,
I said, I'm sure John Elway did a good job of recruiting Peyton Manning, and they had the shared, quarterback background and all that stuff, and they could talk about what it would be like for Peyton. But to me, I think Peyton wanted to get a good contract and win a championship, right? Like if it was a different GM, if it was, whoever, just a non-quarterback, a non-exciting GM, but who had done a good job of
Mike Reinfeld.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, Poindexter from Revenge of the Nerds. If he's the GM, does that ward off Peyton Manning? Like here's Sam's tweet. He said, he quotes it. Says again, this is the quote. Quote: simply put, Rand Carthon makes the Tennessee Titans a destination for the league's top talent. End quote. And then Sam writes, powerful statement from Titans controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk. It's Rand Carthon show now. And I just responded, has a GM ever made a team a destination for top talent? And then we went back and forth, and he's like, he points to the signings of Alshire and Brunskill and Key. I'm like, yeah, but that's relationships, right? So if someone is
with also not top talent.
Well, there's that too. Yes. He also mentioned the Simmons extension. I was like, any GM here is going to do that. Like that's like, and Simmons would have signed here with. I mean, Simmons, who by the way has been out there defending Vrabel on Twitter. After I know Wesley Woodyard launched another assault on Vrabel yesterday, but yeah, I don't see that at all. I just like people. I think Rand has contact, so I think maybe it's just the phrasing that could have been better. I think Rand Carthon certainly has great relationships and contacts in the league. And Rand is a likable person, so, someone comes in here and there's going to be good conversation and all that stuff. But, the idea of anybody picking a team because of a GM, unless it's that GM is the best GM in the league, that GM builds championship teams. So, I guess kind of indirectly I could see that. But as far as, the GM, him or herself, I don't think that'll ever happen in sports. The coach, yes. The coach is who you play for. That's who you deal with on a daily basis. You're working with the coach on trying to win games. The GM's over there with all the suits. The suits are up in the suits area. They're cutting your friends and they're bringing in new players, and you're hoping they don't cut you, and you're hoping they give you a big extension. Like I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's just bad phrasing, because if she actually thinks that like the Titans are going to be this magical destination of free agent players wanting to flock over here because Rand Carthon's the general manager and he's got more power, like that's just total fantasy land to me. Like you said, I mean, that has nothing to do with Rand Carthon. It's the position. It's a general manager. So I don't know how many players across the league are like, you know what? They've got that general manager. That's why I'm going there. It just doesn't really work that way. So, maybe just bad phrasing on that part. Look, it's clear that Amy Adams Strunk has been very impressed by Rand Carthon over the last year plus that he's been there. I mean, that is obvious from the actions that she has taken to this point and the statement that she has put out there. Now, at one point, she had been really impressed by John Robinson and by Mike Vrabel, and that changed pretty quickly. So we'll see what that looks like with Rand Carthon. Now it's on him. And, as Ed on the text line points out, says, I love it. We now know who to blame. If the field gets set on fire, then it's Chad Brinker. If the draft sucks, then it's Rand, as Ed puts.
And which one do you care more about?
Exactly, yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the dynamic has certainly changed here, but there's no question that there's some pretty strong stuff in there from Amy Adams Strunk about Rand Carthon.
This is actually pretty funny from Liam McLeod. Of course he makes it more attractive for free agents. Look how much they were willing to pay Dillard. Well, I suppose if your reputation is we will overpay not very good players, then you can get some not very good players will be attracted to them.
Yes.
But the thing is, again, players want to go, first of all, they're, just like anyone would, just like I would, you would, anybody would. They want to go where they're most valued, but also they want to win. And so if things go well here, then, I can see that maybe being a factor. Again, like Rand is a very liked person around the league and all that stuff, so that's good, but the players aren't making their choices on that. LD from McMinnville on the whole structure thing says PK Kaharski said the president of football operations isn't on the same level as executive VP. Carthon is more powerful, at least in appearance. Yeah, but I will give Jared, I think Jared is overreacting, okay? But in some companies it is like it's simply like, you have these titles, whatever the departments are, they still signify who's above who. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's weird that they have him as president of football operations. I don't know why they wouldn't just have him as EVP of football operations. But the whole corporate title thing is also just like we could do a rant on that one. It's pretty funny.
Getting out of control.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, junior VP and executive VP and, even in college athletics, it's like, athletic director, and then everybody was an assistant athletic director. And it's like, oh, no, this happened to me. I wrote about somebody in an athletic department and just wrote assistant athletic director. And he actually emailed me and said, no, I'm associate athletic director.
Oh.
Okay. So I actually made a joke about it then, and then he didn't take kindly to it. But, and so then it's like then you get senior associate athletic director. The Vols, I think they have executive associate athletic director. I mean, it's out of hand.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
My favorite was when we got on the coaching side last year to the pass game coordinator, but it was on the defensive side of the ball. I was like, now we're getting to defensive pass game coordinators. Awesome.
Yes. I think I said this on the show, but back when they hired Chris Harris a year ago, I was asking someone in the organization, okay, what is it? So it's just agent BS, but say the word. That's what it is. Oh, my client got this title. Ooh,
yeah,
how exciting!
Yes, very exciting stuff there. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, there is another part of this that is really interesting in terms of the dynamic now in place with Rand Carthon and the Tennessee Titans, and one that if executed improperly, I think could be a huge mistake for the Tennessee Titans. We'll get into that coming up next. Take more of your thoughts on our phone and text lines all show long. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Tune in later this morning at 8:45 for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click and win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. I got some tickets to give away to see Stained with special guest Seether at First Bank Amphitheater coming up on Tuesday, April 23rd. Be caller 3-615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Stained with special guest Seether at First Bank Amphitheater coming up on Tuesday, April 23rd, 615-737-1025. So, Joe, in this conglomeration of statements put out yesterday by the Tennessee Titans, we know that Rand Carthon has final say over the roster, and we know that Rand Carthon will have final say / oversight / whatever you want to call it on Brian Callahan and the coaching staff as well. What did you make of that part of this, with Rand Carthon in charge of the coaching staff part of it as well?
Yeah, well, that's something that I think definitely gets asked today for clarification. I don't like it. The thing is, we think about Vrabel's tenure. Obviously there's all the questions about this player, that player, who did this, who did that. But it's not like anybody, looked at anybody else if Vrabel hired an assistant that didn't pan out, right? And now I will say, you think about Vrabel coming in, Matt LaFleur is his OC. Was that Vrabel saying, now I really want this Matt LaFleur? I know, by the way, I do know that Vrabel tried to get Ryan Day to leave Ohio State as OC and become his OC.
Yeah.
But Matt LaFleur, basically, who had interviewed for this job, to me, that was John Robinson saying, here's a great OC for you, okay? That's starting out. But that's also, and look, maybe I guess you could look at this situation and say maybe Rand has a great contact like on the defensive side of the ball or something. But like all of the offensive staff here that Brian Callahan's putting together, I mean, I think it should be him. It should be his choices. And so, like, let's go down, let's play it out. Whatever aspect it is, offensive line coach again, or receipt, whatever. Usually it's coordinators. So now down the line, then you're actually mad at Rand rather than Brian. I mean, I know sometimes some of this is splitting hairs. I mean, we want to know every little thing. Who does this? Who does that? To me, like, I think that the head coach should have autonomy with the coaching staff. I think that's how it should be.
Well, I hope, and I'm interested to see his approach on this. I hope that Rand Carthon has enough. I don't know if patience is the right word, or enough, I guess, the ability to step back and say, yes, while I might have final say and I might have quote unquote oversight of the coaching staff, especially as this guy is new and is assembling his staff, I'm going to let him do his thing and I'm going to let him pick his guys. And then maybe, Joe, at some point, if things aren't going well and Carthon feels like there's some assistant coaches or some staff members that need to be changed, then at that point you step in. I would hope to begin things here that Carthon kind of lets Callahan do his thing as far as the coaching staff is concerned. And if he needs to adjust somewhere down the road, then you adjust down the road, would be the way I hope this is approached by Carthon.
Right. And so also, of course, we've had with Vrabel, you had Craig Aukerman fired this year. You've had other firings, previously to that, but especially like Aukerman this year. So obviously it's like, okay, is that Vrabel? Is that ownership, stepping in? So I guess if something like that were to happen here, then is that Rand?
That's a good question. I mean, that's probably the first assumption you make at this point, right? If
it's written,
if he's the one that's got, yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's, if it happens, my assumption is probably going to go to Rand.
I mean, obviously, oversight is also one of those words that could be used different ways, could be perceived different ways. But I just, basically the whole statement, I mean, the clarity on Brinker is probably a good thing. The title thing's a little bit confusing, or could be taken that way. But the oversight and the coaching staff and the destination for top talent, you took those out, and I'd say it's a very good statement.
I got a texter on the text line that says, Players' agents decide who players interview with and what teams they stay away from. A popular general manager with agents will help the Titans. I'm not saying a popular general manager with agents won't help the Titans, but players' agents do not decide who players interview with. Players' agents work for players. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, they get 3%. Do they help, arrange some things? Do they advise their clients? Sure. If you think a player, an agent's like, hey man, I just love Rand. You're talking to the Titans. Yeah,
You're going to the
Rand is my guy. I love Rand. Come on. I mean, it's every agents work for the players, and they have the same. First of all, for agents, it's absolutely what is the best contract. They're only getting 3% of it, so it's more important to them that you get the best possible contract. But also, whatever if a client's chasing a ring, that's what the agent. Hey, listen, Derek, I know that you're getting a big offer here from the defending Super Bowl champion Ravens, but Rand's awesome, isn't he? Derek. Yeah, it's just
Derek,
I don't
go anywhere. Rand Carthon, my favorite general manager to deal with.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Like someone said, maybe they don't mean just players. They mean like coach, in front office and coaching talent. I mean, I didn't take it that way, but Rand Carthon did just hire a viable head coach, who had interest from other teams. So obviously the interview went well, not just on the Titans side, interviewing Callahan, but it must have gone well to some extent on the other side.
Well, here's a situation where two things can be true, at least from my perspective, Joe. We talked about the discussion of the Vrabel firing and the way that everything went down, and I thought it was a bad look from ownership. In November, being excited for Mike Vrabel to be your head coach of the future and talking about it publicly, to 6 weeks later, you were ready to fire Mike Vrabel. So we talked about all that. We don't have to rehash all that out. I do think in the aftermath of that and the aftermath of what I thought was a very poor press conference from Rand Carthon a couple of weeks ago, the Titans coaching search went pretty well, right? I mean, they identified a bunch of different candidates. They identified, I think, pretty clearly the person that they wanted early in the process, and they went out and hired that person. So, the results of it, whether or not that was a good hire, are going to be yet to be determined. We'll see what happens with Brian Callahan, and if he can turn this thing around, and what that looks like from a win-loss perspective. But the process of getting to it, I think Rand Carthon deserves credit for doing a pretty good job on that front.
No, I agree. I mean, look, they got into it. They talked about, the whole trade thing was a big question at the beginning. Then we find out about the main trade partner wasn't a trade partner, but they talked about the need to get right in there. They got in there. It's pretty obvious who they liked from the start, and there was other interests, and they got him. And I don't know. I don't know if Brian Callahan gets another job. They didn't let him get to two other interviews he had scheduled. So, and they did cast a wide net, and I think it's better to do that than to not. I think it's good to interview a variety of candidates. Look, there's still the whole. I mean, it all comes down to how this goes. I mean, I think it's still fair to question, as Jim Harbaugh now is the Chargers head coach. Belichick, Vrabel are out there. Obviously, Vrabel wouldn't have been a candidate, but the complete dismissal from the start of these highly successful established head coaches as an option. I mean, but that's the way they went. They're trying to kind of start something from the ground up with a guy who is a very viable and exciting candidate. So yeah, I think you have to give credit for the way it went.
Well, and one of the statements, I guess one of the quotes from the statement that got Titans fans pretty fired up yesterday was Amy Adams Strunk saying, quote, "This is not my father's NFL," and talking about going through, whether it's analytics or whether it's, the ever-changing landscape of modern-day football. It's pretty clear that Amy Adams Strunk and the Titans feel like a new direction is needed, and I guess modernization of the way that they run their organization has been a pretty consistent theme. Whether you're talking about offensive football, that they're trying to get into, and PK's discussion about passing the ball yesterday and Brian Callahan's views on that, or just the analytics. And we talked about that even last year with Carthon coming in and with Chad Brinker coming in and with Anthony Robinson coming in, like just kind of catching up in that regard to some of the other teams around the NFL. The "it's not my father's NFL" quote got Titans fans fired up yesterday, Joe.
Yep, that's a good quote. I mean, definitely, "it's not my father's NFL" is a good quote. And I thought maybe the most interesting two words in that statement from Amy Anna Strunk was the words of sports science. Because I do think that, because along with, yes, like you said, analytics and all that stuff, try to be as modern as possible on the cutting edge and doing all the things that the successful organizations are doing. But the sports science part of it, I think, is more confirmation that, right or wrong, at some point, through this whole thing with all the injuries with Vrabel, how many times did we, first of all, say it's hard to believe that that their trainers are bad or whatever, but that Amy and I'm Strunk, if I'm the owner of the team, I am just saying, okay, then what the heck is happening?
Right.
Why? I mean, I do think that player selection was part of it, in some cases, but still, why? Is it the way Vrabel practices, whatever it is, right? So I take that part of the statement as another kind of an acknowledgement of some blame had to go to the last regime, and they're going to try to fix that. So, look, again, it's hard to really identify it, and it's hard to really exactly evaluate what the heck happened there. But it's a trend that was a bad trend, and so I feel like that was mentioned in the statement. I think that was very deliberate.
Coming up next, it's time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things for this week in sports on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game.
The best and worst of the sports week, now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst.
You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. Believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle, it's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
It is that time of the week, time for the best and worst thing in sports. We'll take your thoughts, your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Sometimes I feel bad that I go first, so I'm gonna leave alone that the Titans hired what looks like could be a good head coach if anybody else wants to take it. If not, that's fine. I'm just saying I'm leaving.
That's not mine. You go ahead.
Well, I mean, I have another best. My best is the Detroit Lions. I have to go to the Detroit Lions with my best.
That was my best.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I have many options.
There we go. It's a great story. It's a great story. I had so much fun watching that game with family and hearing from a ton of people, and it's just been fun to see people rally around that team. I think it's a very likable team. It's a great sports story. We have this, I'd say fairly often in various leagues, that you'll have that team that kind of people, maybe, a lot of people have their teams out of it now. And so is there one team for everybody to rally around, and it seems like it's them. I know I saw some map the other day. It's some survey. I have no idea, how many people were surveyed, 11. I don't know. But it was like every single state but California rooting for the Lions in the NFC Championship game against the Niners. It's been a lot of fun, and good for them. You got to tip the cap and give credit, because that is a lot to overcome. Just the history and the culture of losing, and they've done it no matter what happens Sunday. My worst is the discussion around Josh Allen. And I think this is another great example of, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's it's kind of like the discussion around Brock Purdy. I could probably throw those two together. Like Brock Purdy, this is what I see every day. Oh, this guy's not great. Look at this throw. And it's like some throw in the game against the Packers. And then it's people who are like, he's an absolute scrub who wouldn't start for anybody else. He's just starting because he's not an MVP, and he's not a scrub. And it's the same thing with Josh Allen in terms of, so much of the, he can't get it done. He, huge disappointment. What are they going to do about Josh Allen? Well, that's the best thing they got going for him. It's Josh Allen. He's a great player. Is he as great as Patrick Mahomes? No, he's not. He's not as great as Patrick Mahomes. I don't know where he ranks exactly, but I would take him as my quarterback. He's a great player. And he made plays in that game that could have won it, and he missed a couple plays too. And Patrick Mahomes made a couple more than he made, because Patrick Mahomes is the best freaking quarterback in the NFL. But it's not binary. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think those two quarterbacks are great examples of the frustration. And a lot of it goes to the daytime arguing shows that get more attention than they should.
Nick Keyser, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Let's start with the Nashville Predators. I think that them honoring the alums the way that they are is awesome. I mean, we've waited for this for a long time to see in Nashville what they would possibly do. We've seen Rene get his own statue. We've seen different guys get honored, and they'll also have Captain's Night on February 13th against the Devils. And I think it's awesome that the alums got to come back, at least a select few of them got to come back and sign their own pucks and be honored for that first season. And so it's a special time. It's obviously the 25th anniversary. So I love that for them. It was nice to meet a lot of those guys and just hear their thoughts on what has changed in the time frame for sure. My worst, I was at the dentist when I saw this. Adrian Griffin got fired by the Bucks, and I immediately thought, why? And I never really cared that much about the NBA, but it really bothers me that the whole narrative can become this is about the players saying we don't want him as a head coach anymore. In the middle of a season when you're 30-13, I just find that ridiculous. Why on earth would it be this time of the season when you fire your coach? Obviously, Doc Rivers, great coach, great hire, but also what's going on? He is a little overrated for sure. But I just am not a fan of how players handle situations like this. They just blow up and then they're dancing last night when they're at their pregame just stretching out and getting announced. And I'm like, what is going on? I just don't understand that. I think that's just ridiculous, Robby.
That was a weird firing. I mean, look, obviously I'm not keeping up with the day-to-day of the Milwaukee Bucks, so I don't know
Me neither.
what was going on behind the scenes there that maybe led to it. But I mean, the initial reaction, Joe, that I saw too was, oh, they're 30-13 in second place in the Eastern Conference, and they fired their coach. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a wild one, man. I mean, that is a wild one. Have they made a hire?
Yeah, it's Doc Rivers.
It's Doc Rivers.
They did officially make the Doc Rivers hire.
Oh, yeah.
Deep sigh. Nice guy. Deep sigh.
Nice guy. No question about it. My best thing in sports is Tennessee men's basketball, Joe. You'll be very proud of me. They look very good. Dalton Connect, big, important player on that team, a difference-making player that maybe they've not had in a while. I'm not going to say that they're winning the national title like Joe Rexrode is, but I am excited to see what they do come March. So my best in sports goes to Tennessee men's basketball, and my worst in sports goes to Vanderbilt men's basketball, and specifically the fan base, which I feel bad for right now because Vanderbilt men's basketball, as you know, Joe, has a long history. I mean, look, it's not like they're North Carolina or Duke or anything like that, but they've been a respectable program for a long time. That gym at Memorial Gym used to be a place where it was really difficult to come into and win. And I've seen a lot of people talking about it this week of Jerry Stackhouse, and Jack Gentry talked about it on A to Z Sports. I thought it made some really good points as well. I just it's sad to watch right now what's going on with that team and with that program. And they got hammered again the other day by Mississippi State on the road. I'm looking at conference play right now, Joe, and trying to determine how many wins they're going to get in conference play. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'll sneak up and grab a couple here, but it's a rough go right now for Jerry Stackhouse in that program.
No, it's a bad situation. I mean, it's year 5 and it's gone. It's just basically collapsed this year. So, yeah, I think basically we're in the situation of just waiting to see what Candace Lee does at the end of the season. But, to me, 5 years, no NCAA tournaments. Got close last year. SEC Coach of the Year last year. A year ago, I thought that he had maybe turned the corner. A year ago, they lose 101-44 to Alabama. And remember, it was kind of like this discussion, but they weren't, the season wasn't over yet. And they turn around. They beat Tennessee. They beat Kentucky. They beat Auburn. But there's no such revival coming with this team.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans and the promotion of Rand Carthon coming up next. Take your thoughts on that. Predators assistant coach Todd Richards will join us at 7:15, and you'll hear from Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist Patrick Willis and legendary Tennessean at 7:30. And Tennessee Vols fans, I can promise you're going to want to hear that conversation. That's all coming up. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Predators assistant coach Todd Richards will join us coming up at 7:15. Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist Patrick Willis will be with us at 7:30. So looking forward to that. Charles Robinson from 8 to 8:30 talking Titans and all things NFL. So the introductory press conference from Brian Callahan coming up later today. Joe Rexrode, what are we excited to hear about from Brian Callahan as he introduces himself to Titans fans and media today? Is Joe Rexrode there?
Hello? Nick
Hello.
decided Nick didn't want me to be part of the show anymore.
Wow, I just totally cut you off.
This was a mute that for once was not on me.
To be fair, Joe had the tape and advertisement, so sorry about that.
Keezer's just on one today.
Nick's hatred for this show, I swear. It is
Hatred for the show.
palpable.
Hey, I was listening to you.
You can feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
It's like the comment I sent you guys from Jim Comparoni about Jim Harbaugh yesterday. We'll get to that later.
Yes.
I'm not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some serious hatred. What am I excited to hear about? That's a good question.
Thank you.
Well, my first question is, so Brian, who has final say? Yeah, that's my question. Brian, who has final say, and will this be a collaboration? No. By the way, speaking of that presser, there is the last press conference left a bad taste in some people's mouths, and I have to say I was part of the problem. If you remember the Rand Carthon presser after they fired Vrabel, there was a whole lot of interrupting and yelling. Actually, a couple of times, I really, really yelled to get my question in over someone else.
I remember.
I kind of feel bad about it, but it was one of those things where it's like there's actually a lot of questions that I want to make sure get asked, and I don't know. Rand, Trey Avery, do you think that I'm like I don't have time for this stuff. I got to interrupt a little bit, That was pretty good, right? That was pretty good. It was pretty solid. You read Ren, love you, Glennon. But I haven't really. I mean, I think Levis is a big thing today.
Sure.
What do you think of Levis? What was your? And the thing is, it's not like the Bengals were seriously evaluating Will Levis last year because they have a quarterback.
Exactly.
So, but still, I mean, he has thoughts on him. I'm sure. You still look at the quarterbacks. I mean, you still have to be apprised of everything significant coming into the league from a talent perspective. So that, his philosophy, I think just the football stuff, and I'm excited about talking about football. Obviously, staff questions are also very interesting and relevant right now. The question of Bill Callahan, and I don't even know at this point what would Brian be able to say. It may be like, I just don't have any answers on staff situations. But I think it's a good question to ask, where they might be with that. And defensively, how he views that. Does he have a type? Does he have a style, a philosophy, or is it like he's out there looking for the best defensive mind he can find, and then that person sets that? Things like that. I mean, those are the football stuff. Like, what's the football going to be like? But it's there was a lot of question. Mike Vrabel, first-time head coach, 1 year as a coordinator, wasn't good. But most of the questions in his intro presser were about Mariota. Were about how are you going to get the most out of Mariota that last year this coaching staff could not.
Yeah.
But it'll be, I think Levis is probably where I start. Just how he views him, just what he says. How much, and look, from a media perspective, but it's also from a fan perspective. I've seen a lot of interviews with Brian Callahan, talked to a lot of people who know him really well. I think for us, that's media fans, I think we're going to be getting a lot more information and explanation of things than Vrabel wanted to give us. So, I mean, I think just the way the presser goes and sort of the depth of information, that's my hope. I mean, I have high expectations. I don't want to get disappointed. I think we're going to have quote unquote better pressers with him just because, I think he's a little bit better with some of the media things than Vrabel was.
I'm interested to hear what he has to say on like the wide receiver part of this and just how much of a difference like the value placed on wide receiver is in today's game. And I think his situation in Cincinnati was such an interesting example of it because I mean the obvious answer, Joe, is like if you're picking an offensive line or a wide receiver, what's more important to have? I mean the obvious answer is you want to have both, and the Bengals have been trying like mad to fix their offensive line to the point where it's acceptable. And certainly their offensive line now is much better than it was a couple of years ago. But they did, going back to that Jamar Chase pick, they had the opportunity to pick, two really good players, right? Jamar Chase at wide receiver, Penei Sewell at tackle, and they went with the wide receiver. Now, that wide receiver had also played college football with their quarterback and had a pretty good, connection there. So how much did that play into it? But just his philosophy on the wide receiver position and, how much of a point of emphasis that's going to be for this team to bring in some playmaking guys. Like, I think that's going to be interesting to hear his thoughts on wide receiver, the way he wants to attack defenses in the passing game and put up some points. I mean, Titans fans are starving for points, man. We're starving for the time that you can get back to 30 points. Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later under Brian Callahan.
Yeah, well, for sure. And so people are going to – I mean, again, people are already, just like Kaharski, overreacting yesterday, to the quote about passing passing offenses. I saw Terry McCormick had a tweet, that the Titans have yet to have a 4,000-yard passer. And obviously you can go all around the league and find – I think he said, like, Kirk Cousins has 7 of them. But obviously, you can find a lot of 4,000-yard passers in recent years in the NFL. That used to be a ridiculous number to try to hit. So that's all good. I think that is a really interesting question that you have, and it's a good one on the draft. I think the answer is you go with the best available. Jamar Chase, like you said, he played with Burrow. Also, Jamar Chase is a singular talent. I mean, Jamar Chase
he's a freak.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't take that as every time that Brian Callahan encountered that choice, he would go receiver. But yeah, that's an interesting one to go into because both of them have turned out to be great players.
Jackson on the text line, Joe, for you says, Joe, ask him if his daddy is going to join him on the staff, and make sure you use the word daddy. This is from Jackson on the text line.
Coach, you gonna hire your daddy, Coach? You bringing your daddy in here?
I don't think he's going to be able to say anything about that given the contractual situation, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we're going to get answers on that today. I'm going to stick with what I'm saying, which is the Cleveland Browns would again be a joke if they tried to block this. It's like Ben Stiller. It's like Ben Stiller and Happy Gilmore, You get in there and, like, go make that wallet, no, you will be coaching offensive line, Bill Callahan. I mean, get out of here. I don't buy it, but we'll see.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Predators assistant coach Todd Richards. Preds on the road tonight in Minnesota. We'll get his thoughts on the way the team is playing and the 3-game road trip coming up. That is next. Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits Saturday night for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are at home taking on FIU with pregame beginning at 4:30, tip-off at 5 o'clock. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Preds back in action tonight on the road, taking on the Minnesota Wild. And to help us talk about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Predators assistant coach Todd Richards. Todd, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys.
Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning, Todd. So as you look at the way your team is playing right now, heading into this game tonight against Minnesota, what stands out to you about your group and where you guys are at this point in the season, approaching the All-Star break?
Well, I think you always want things to be a little bit better, but I think that the way that the team is played, we're giving ourselves a chance. We're in games, giving ourselves a chance to win a game every night, whether it's our goaltending, whether it's our how we've defended as a team, and power play, special teams have been pretty good. So we're giving ourselves a chance to win hockey games. Now, the one thing that we have to get better at is just closing out games. You know, in Arizona, you lose by 1 goal. Really, the Florida game was a 1-goal game. I know what the final ended up 4-1, but there's 2 empty nets. But those are the games where we have to find ways to manufacture points and get out of games with points. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's how you find your way into the playoffs.
So, Todd, Jeremy Lauzon, guy out there just hitting everything in sight. He's becoming a little bit more of a factor in making plays. A lot of talk about, I know Andrew Brunette said some very, encouraging things about him. What are you seeing from him? Where is he on his development right now? And what's the ceiling for him?
You know what? I think we're seeing, we're scratching the surface of what he can be in the NHL. I happened to be here in Nashville when we acquired him, and I think he's really started to blossom as a player. He's big, he's strong. I don't think you realize how big he is until you're standing next to him, and just his size. But the one thing that he does as a big a hockey player, he moves extremely well. He's got very good feet on the ice. And then I think just the way that this season has gone, and obviously the praise that he's gotten from people around the team, but also people away from the team in the way that he played has given him the confidence. And, just like anything in today's game, you got to skate in today's game. And the one thing, again, for a big guy, he's got good feet. His lateral movement allows him to close quickly on guys and deliver those punishing hits. I've been around this game a lot, and you see, certain physical players, and he is the one guy that you talk about. He hits with his body. He doesn't hit. He doesn't stop. He doesn't, close the guys and kind of – some guys can lose that momentum of, right before the point of impact, and he doesn't. So when he closes and he hits guys, they definitely feel it. Now, the other thing in how he defends with his feet, the other thing, it allows him to be an offensive player. He's not a Roman Josi, but he can definitely get up the ice and he can contribute. And again, I think he's finding ways to do that. And I think we're just kind of scratching the surface with him there.
So, Todd, Juuso Parssinen sent down to Milwaukee, and obviously a young player, a 7th-round pick who got called up early last season and has been with your club pretty much ever since, even though there have been some injuries tossed in there too. But what was the message from the coaching staff to Parssinen as you guys sent him back to Milwaukee?
Oh, well, we really believe he's an NHL player. It's these things happen with young players. Not everybody's road to the NHL is, and most roads, are not literally clean roads. There's a lot of bumps in them. There's a lot of potholes in them, and you just got to find the way there. And we are very high on Parse and what he is as a person and as a player. And, finding those consistencies. And sometimes in young players, you don't want them in the lineup, out of the lineup, in the lineup, out of the lineup. You want your young players to play. And really, this is just about him and his future. And again, getting back to his game and helping him to try to find his game. But he's going to be an NHL player. And we're really excited about him, and we're excited about his future in Nashville.
So, Todd, you mentioned, finding those, finding a way late in games. I know, obviously, you guys have also done that a fair amount this year. Teams go through ups and downs, but when you get into a situation where you are now, like what do you work on as a coaching staff to try to get the best out of those key moments in games?
Well, a lot of times when you get to this point in the season, you're halfway through the season, it's not about the conditioning part. It's not about any of that anymore. A lot of times in the rigors of the middle of the season, it's I think in a lot of ways it's trying to give the players every tool necessary so that they can have success. And I'm talking a little bit on an individual scale, because you're coaching an individual, but you're also coaching as a team. And some of it is just that positive, mindset. And this is where the season gets hard. And every team is starting to amp up their game a little bit. We have a little bit of a target on our back based on where we are in the standings. And that's a great spot to be in. But right now the coaching is really kind of like fine tuning and again, trying to set the players up, put them in the best position individually, put them in the best position collectively as a group, so we can go out and we can get their best performances each and every night.
Reds assistant coach Todd Richards with us here on Robby and Rexrode. Todd, on the offensive side of things, obviously the Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist line has been dynamite for you guys all season long. And Burnett's talked about trying to get more guys to fill that role and help out in secondary scoring, and the confidence just not really being there with that right now. So how do you, as a coaching staff, kind of related to that last question, work on confidence? Is it something you can work on, or is that something that just has to come naturally throughout the course of a game?
Well, it's something that we can work on as a coaching staff. Whether it's individually with players or again, you're doing video as a group. Certainly working on individual skills, and we have some young players up front. So we talked about Parse going down to Milwaukee, and it wasn't a punishment or anything like that. It's to help him and hopefully help him find his game, get some confidence, and because we saw what he could do, from the previous year, and they're just getting that consistency in his game. But it's no different up front with some of the other players too, and our young players, that have come up last year and contributed last year, and for whatever reason right now can't get into a rhythm of scoring. They can contribute here or there, but they aren't like what you said, the Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist line. We need to find, not that our lines have to be like that, but we need to find some more contributions from them up front. The other thing is, I think as a group of defensemen on the back end, we need more from them a little bit too, and just how they can contribute. And not necessarily talking about them like finishing plays and scoring goals, but can they start plays from their own end? Can they help drive plays through the neutral zone? Can they keep plays alive in the offensive zone? So it gives our second, third, fourth lines more opportunities in the offensive zone so we can score. But there's things that we can do. Our skills coach and offensive coaches, Derek McKenzie and Dan Heinold, have done a good job in working with guys. Actually, Brew does a really good job too at the end of practice, taking the group of forwards and going down and just working on things. It has been a little bit frustrating. There's no doubt about that, but it's not from a lack of effort or a lack of want from the guys up front. We right now we just can't find that click that connects and we get that push from them. Some of it is just youth, a little bit of inexperience. That is a little bit of the growing pains that you go through as a young team and a young group up front.
Todd, Milwaukee doing really well, young by AHL standards. As you talk through this, as you just laid out for us, are there potential answers there that you guys are discussing who may get a shot here at some point in the near future?
Well, it's certainly something that you talk about as a group, and Bruno's done a good job keeping in contact with Carl Taylor down there, and Scott Nickel, our assistant general manager, who's has his thumbprints all over Milwaukee and what they're doing down there. So there's always those conversations that go on. That's above my pay grade. I just kind of those are the conversations that I think Brew has with Barry Trotz and Scott Nickel, and but every organization, is doing that, and certainly we're trying to find solutions to the certain. I'm not even going to say problems that we have, but it is the issue that we have is that secondary scoring. But to credit to Carl and his coaching staff and Scott and everybody around that have brought in the players there, that they're having lots of success down in Milwaukee, and that only makes things great for us up here. It's a good problem to have when you got good players down there and you're deciding whether to bring guys up and give them opportunities.
Well, Todd, thanks so much for taking time to be with us this morning. Good luck tonight against Minnesota, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Preds assistant coach Todd Richards, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Patrick Willis, Pro Football Hall of Famer. He joined Paul Kuharski and myself for a conversation earlier this week. And if you're a Tennessee Vols fan, you're not going to want to miss the way that his college career almost panned out. That's a big missed opportunity for Tennessee. We'll get into that and more with Patrick Willis up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
fragile. They barely can walk, and they only in their 50s and 60s. You know, what's the point of having, you know, what's the point of working so hard and trying to make a good living for yourself just to get older and be crippled and can't really enjoy it? And that's, for me, you know, growing up the way I grew up, you know, I said, man, I'm gonna give everything I have so I can kind of have the quality of life that I want to enjoy, you know, as I get older. And so taking all that into consideration, yeah, that was a choice. And then now, you know, it's I don't have to take on 300-pound guys anymore. You know, I don't have to, you know, worry about them scat backs. So it's not as much, but I can feel it at times when I, after working out, when I'm working out. Even now, I still have to use CBD and cream on my toes as I did when I was playing. And so, yeah, it still aggravate a little bit, but it's nothing near as much as when it was, you know, you had to go out there and perform it against A1 top athletes every day, practice and or games.
Patrick Willis with us here on Robby and Rexrode. So, Patrick, I want to go back to your college days. Obviously, you end up having a phenomenal year, or phenomenal career, at Ole Miss. But a lot of Tennessee fans look back and say, man, can you imagine if Patrick Willis was a Tennessee Volunteer? And I know you grew up in the state. Was Tennessee ever on your radar? Did they ever get in touch recruiting you? What was your experience like as you know with Philip Fulmer and that staff? And I guess what do you say to Tennessee fans who are really disappointed you didn't end up as a member of the Tennessee Vols?
You know, oh man, what a story. You know, I'll say God works in mysterious ways. You know, oftentimes they say, tell God your plans, and he'll laugh at them. And for me, I thought, you know, growing up in Tennessee, you know, I grew up earlier on. I was a big Ohio State fan, Nebraska fan, but of course you get to middle school and high school, and you start realizing like Tennessee is the Vols. It's the America's team, and it's Tennessee is ball country. And I was like, man, in order to go to where I have seen myself being, I got to go to the Tennessee Vols, because I knew that they had put out a plethora of athletes. That I knew that you can go up there and pretty much not even start and still get opportunity to try out in pro day, and they'll still take you just because of the recognition of the Vols. However, you know, I remember going on my unofficial visits to Tennessee, my 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times, and I just remember them never saying anything to me. I mean, no matter how good my games were the night before I would go in there, I never heard them say, you know what, Willis, we watched your film, we heard you played well, like, keep on balling, you know, we're interested in it. It was to the point to where I remember my dad saying, boy, a closed mouth never get fed. And I never forget, I went up to the coach after my last visit there, because it take about 5 hours to get up there. And I got up there, and it was the same thing again. So I said, you know what, I'm going to ask Coach Berry. And I said, Coach, now I don't understand. How come nobody is, you know, having a talk with me? I haven't been on an unofficial visit. I've been trying to show you all that I'm really interested in being here. And he pretty much told me, he said, you know what, we're recruiting 2 other guys, and we don't know if you're going to make your ACT score. And that right away, I mean, it hurt, because I was like, man, if you just knew how hard I'm working on this, if you just know how hard I'm grinding, like I'm going to get it done. I'm going to make it happen. Like, just believe in me. And pretty much it was almost as if like they say, you know what, our attention is elsewhere. And at the end of the day, you just want to go somewhere where you want it, where you welcome it, and you can make it at home. And I just said, you know what, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna focus on what I can focus on, and that's continue to play the best ball I can play. And out of nowhere, Ole Miss pops up, and you know, it was almost like they say, when you know, you know. And the energy was just on point. Granted, like, you know, that it was a recruiter that was, you know, Coach McIntyre, Coach Mike McIntyre, and he was just, it was amazing. And I just never forget, I went on my official visit to Tennessee, and I'm sorry, I went on my unofficial visit to Ole Miss, and I knew after I walked in that Walk of Champions, I didn't tell anyone, but I knew it was a couple of times. It was my second time in my life where I knew. They say when you know, you know. I knew that I said, this is a school for me. And I said again, if I had to do it all over again, I would go back to Ole Miss again and try to beat all those teams. So, yeah, man, it was again, God working mysterious ways. And if it was up to me, I would have went to Tennessee, but ultimately I'm glad I ended up at Ole Miss.
Blake Bedingfield, a former Titan scout here, I was talking to him about you getting ready for this. And he said when Chris Johnson was in his prime, when he broke through, he usually geared down when he was heading on one of those long touchdown runs. Only two guys ever made him aware in the secondary that he had to maintain his top speed. Troy Polamalu and you. You remember chasing Chris Johnson and him maybe being surprised by your speed?
Oh my goodness, I think it might be the other way around. Paul, I won't lie to you. I do remember we played. I think it was 2008. TKO and I were inside linebackers together, and never forget that defense we had. A lot of people don't give us a lot of credit for that defense we had that I was a part of from 2007 to 2010 in our run defense. That we may not have the best pass defense, but our run defense was pretty on point, and we had not allowed 100-yard rusher, and I still don't think he had got 100 yards, but I never forget we had a counter. They ran a counter, and I seen Chris Johnson on film run, and we always had a coach say, "Don't overestimate your speed, but don't underestimate his." And to kill, he hit that counter, and I was supposed to be there a second. I was supposed to be there a little faster, but usually I can gauge and I can be like, all right, I'm gonna let them think that I'm not there. And as soon as they think they're gonna come out, I'm hitting them right at the moment that they cross that they get ready to cross the yard line. And I never forget, I tried that with Chris Johnson, and he hit that little step on me, and I never forget. Spike Dog looked at me. He came back to the huddle. He said, "Cap, what happened?" I hit it. I said, "Man, that sucker fast, man." I said, "He a lot faster than I thought." And so it was probably more the other way around. And him and I every now and then, I've joked with him before on Instagram. What gave him love on Instagram, I think he was showing a play, and I said, "Yep, I know that feeling where you think you got him, and all of a sudden he just slowly running on past you, and you're not catching up to him." So I appreciate him for sharing. I appreciate him for admiring my speed, but I most definitely admired his that much more.
Well, Patrick, as you look at your career, I mean, the numbers are outstanding that you put up during your time in San Francisco. As you reflect back on it, what are you most proud of about your career?
Man, as I reflect back on it, it would really just be having the will to not be denied, meaning that, coming from, a small town, coming from, I don't want to say much and nothing, but just coming from my circumstances, my situation, and to be able to just stay focused and climb the rope and, meet some great people along the way and play for a great organization, an organization that I remember as a kid saying I never, ever played for, my days. So I said, boy, never say never, because I was a big Cowboys fan growing up. And to be able to go to San Fran and just make history, become a part of their history, it's just all truly, truly a blessing. And I just give all praise and glory to God.
Well, Patrick, appreciate so much you taking time to be with us. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you today. And, again, very kind with your time. Thanks so much, and good luck with things moving forward here.
Wish you the best of luck. I know you got a lot of support in that room, and you got a hell of a career.
Hey, I really, really appreciate you all. And also thank you to everyone who supports and to follow my career and continues to believe in me. And I really I appreciate it all. And whether I ever get a chance to tell you in person or not, just know that I'm truly grateful and thankful.
Hey, you got to time up your trips to Tennessee a little better, not come when it's when we've got ice.
Hey, you know what? I showed. I won't lie to you, but I would not. It was very tough to come here during this cold time. But I had I was up for not up, but I had received an award from the Star of Hope from the Community Foundation of Northwest Mississippi for being their Star of Hope this year, and so that's what brought me back to the South. And I'm in the right place. I'm where I need to be, because it's bringing back some memories as to why, like, when I was young, this cold weather, why I wanted to live where it was warm, and to get drafted to California. I'll tell you, man, it's been truly a remarkable journey to this point, and just truly grateful. So thank you all, and just.
Hey, folks, when it comes to the NFL playoffs, you got to win one game at a time. When you bet the NFL playoffs on FanDuel, one game can mean a lot of wins. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, has all your favorite bets like the money line, the spread, of course, but all sorts of prop bets as well. We give you a little parlay here because FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay for every NFL playoff game. I'll give you one for Ravens, Chiefs. Chiefs. Lamar Jackson over rushing yards. How about Patrick Mahomes also over on the rushing yards? That would be mine. Remember now, every day, FanDuel, all customers, no sweat, same game parlay. What this means is that you can combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payday, and you get bonus bets back if your same game parlay doesn't win. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/Joe102 if you don't already have an account. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and you got to be 21 or older, present in Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is now withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call the Tennessee Red Line, 800-889-9789.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
We're innocent. And we stood strong and tall because we knew we were innocent. And I just like to point that out. And these guys are innocent. And yeah, overcome that. It wasn't that hard because we knew we were innocent. So, yeah.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. A lot of talk about being innocent from Jim Harbaugh there, Joe, and he's found himself with a new job. I turn things over to you.
Yeah, this has got to be a quick one. So I'll make it quick. There's a lot of things we could get into here. We had Kaharski on there yesterday. Yeah, very appropriate that Harbaugh takes the Chargers job yesterday with the he got an NFL offer. He took the NFL offer. He's been trying to get an NFL offer for 3 years, but he left Michigan with a natty. So good for him and them. And of course, that soundbite after winning it all is very interesting as we think about what he was asking Michigan to do contractually, which was to somehow give him protections from all the punishment to come from all the cheating he did at Michigan. But here's the thing that came down late yesterday that was really fascinating. This went back and forth. Another thing I love about stuff like this, like there's some Michigan fan account that has a ton of followers that said he was in Ann Arbor. He was back in Ann Arbor yesterday and was like, oh, boy. And even some actual media folks are like, oh, you see, everybody talks about the Harbaugh stuff, and every year he comes back to Michigan. And then Diana Rossini puts out a tweet, yeah, Jim Harbaugh's still in Los Angeles, everybody. Calm down, basically. But in the meantime, some reporting came out, and this includes, I believe, my friend Angelique Chengelis, who's covered Michigan forever for the Detroit News, had this first. So I'm going to read this about the contract that Michigan, in the last second, as he was about to sign with the Chargers, after weeks of not agreeing to this ridiculous, try to give him protections from all the punishment. And let me read this paragraph. Quote, Harbaugh's attorneys who've been trying to work with Michigan to keep him in Ann Arbor said it took until the proverbial 11th hour on Wednesday for Michigan to give in on certain contract language. By then, it was too late. After months of Michigan rejecting the contract terms his lawyers proposed in late 2023, a source with knowledge of the negotiations told the Detroit News that Michigan finally agreed to Harbaugh's proposal on Wednesday afternoon when Harbaugh was already in the final stage of discussions with the Chargers. So, in the end, Michigan sold its soul and became an absolute whore for Harbaugh, and he left them anyway. Man, that's a toughie, man. That is a toughie. And again, look, let's make it clear. Michigan is like anybody else in this level of football where it's about winning and nothing else, okay? So they're not any better or any worse than anybody else at the highest levels of college football, but it is amazing that they finally buckled on this. And also, I still need to know how that would work. Like, what would that actually do? I mean, if the NCAA came in and said, show cause Jim Harbaugh, how does his contract protect him? I mean, I guess, obviously, we can protect him from penalties from Michigan. Yeah, like financial penalties, things like that. Suspended, he still gets paid. I'd love to see that. I assume we will get some open records details on that down the line. But in the end, Michigan totally buckled, and it didn't matter. Because when Jim Harbaugh finally gets an NFL offer, he was always going to leave for the NFL. So now he left him with a natty. Whether it gets taken away or vacated or whatever, that the natty happened. They deserved the natty. They were the best team. And now we get the Harbaugh experience back in the NFL, which is going to be pretty freaking fascinating. By the way, Titans at Chargers next season.
Some people very excited to see Jim Harbaugh gone from Michigan, Joe, from what I hear.
Oh, you talking about the thing I sent you guys?
Yes, I am.
All right, I'll read this. Sometimes things get a little. Now, Jim Comparoni, friend of mine, he's covered Michigan State. SpartanMag.com. I think they're on 3 now. They were rivals forever. I'm going to read his tweet. Quote, college football as a sport and sportsmanship in general has a chance to improve with hashtag Jim Harbaugh out of the game. He is a dishonorable man, and his program was a disgrace to college football for the past 3 years, end quote. Now, there's a top roper right there. Woo!
I love it. I also love the hashtag Jim Harbaugh on that tweet, too. That was good.
Yeah, I guess
it made me laugh.
Want to make sure that anybody searching Jim Harbaugh would come across that lovely endorsement of him. So anyway, as PK said yesterday, he was going to the NFL. This contract thing I thought was ridiculous from the start, but they finally buckled. Just anything they could do to keep him. This is how college athletics goes.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. We'll get his thoughts on the hiring of Brian Callahan and all things NFL as well as we head into conference championship weekend. That's all coming up. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. And we are joined, like we are every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, by our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports on our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. I heard Joe braved the fog. I heard he braved the fog to get into studio today. So tough.
He's overcoming the weather one day at a time. Charles.
Whatever, Texas guy.
Oh, man. How you guys doing this morning?
We're awesome, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. So Brian Callahan's the guy, Charles, here from with the Titans, hired from Cincinnati as their OC. What did you make of that hire and the way things played out for the Titans?
Well, it was interesting because, it came on right before they hired him. I was talking to somebody in Carolina, and we were sort of going over where that search was. And basically, it was like, not going well. Panther search is a little rough right now. And it sounded like they had gotten to the point where it's like, well, geez, maybe it's going to be Todd Monken. Like it was like, all right, they're going to, whiff on several candidates. Maybe it's going to end up being Todd Monken, who obviously the OC of the Baltimore Ravens, or Frank Smith, the OC of the Miami Dolphins. And, Callahan's name came up, and it was interesting. He said to me, he said, this guy has a premium attached to him beyond how much, the Bengals really think of him. It's this attachment of Bill Callahan, obviously his father, who's the offensive line assistant at the Cleveland Browns. And I hadn't really thought about it, but I went back to my notes in training camp, and there was a general manager who I was sitting with one day, and we were just kind of talking about the difficulty of dealing with offensive line development in the NFL. And he told me, he said, look, man, the two most important assistant coaches who are not coordinators in the NFL right now, he said the two most important assistant coaches in the NFL right now are Jeff Stoutland and Bill Callahan. And he said, because you have two guys who can get their hands on offensive linemen who are coming out of college right now, who are very difficult to develop, who are very difficult to scout, and can turn these guys into an assembly line of real offensive line talent. You can take, they can take the second layer of the depth chart from the offensive line position, and they can develop into real players who can then succeed if you lose. Somebody goes down to an injury or free agency or whatever it is, you have an in-house ability to basically turn college players or underdeveloped linemen into an assembly line of real offensive line talent. That is a big deal in the NFL right now. And I had completely forgotten. I remembered Stoutland, especially the Stoutland portion of it. And Callahan's been around forever. So I think off the top of my mind, I'm like, okay, the zone, I've been talking about this guy forever. He's been in the league forever. So I think it just kind of skipped off the top of my head. But I had never really thought about the potential premium of him joining Brian, wherever he went. And, Joe and I texted about this a little bit. It reminded me a little bit of when I would talk to people inside the Bengals about him. Reminded me a little bit of Matt LaFleur. When LaFleur left the Titans, there was this sort of, there were different opinions about him in the building. It was like, well, Zach Taylor's a play caller. What does he really do? And there were other people like, no, he's the special sauce guy. He connects with these players. He definitely injects himself into a lot of what the design is. There were huge proponents of him, and it was a little bit like LaFleur. When LaFleur left, I had people who were like, I don't see it. I don't know how this guy's going to make it as a head coach in the NFL. It makes no sense. And other people were like, no, he's bright. He's a connector. He knows the Shanahan offense. And he's really going to make it the next stop. So I'm curious to see how this goes. I'm really curious to see ultimately what Bill Callahan ends up doing, because that's a highly paid man in Cleveland. I mean, if he's making about $3 million a year, but he's compensated for a reason. It's because there's very, very few in the NFL who can do what he can do from an offensive line standpoint.
Okay, well, I want to stick with Callahan because, first of all, I find it outrageous to think that the Cleveland Browns would not let him out of his contract or however it works to go. Look, first of all, not just I mean, it's a father-son thing. He's gonna be a kept man at 67. He doesn't have to work anymore.
I don't. Okay, Joe. I mean, let's wait and see, because I will tell you this. I don't. Andrew Berry, the general manager there, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, don't strike me as the keep guys hostage types. Like if he wants to go and he says, hey, this is really something that's really important to me. Want to go and as you said, at a point in my career now, been around a long time. It's a dream to spend this time, obviously, with family. I mean, look, Vic Fangio, part of the reason why I think the Dolphins freed him up was that he wanted to go, I think now hasn't happened yet, but, he was interested in getting back to the Philadelphia area, being around family, spent time as an advisor with the Eagles before he ended up as the DC in Miami. And I think Mike McDaniel was like, look, I'm not going to stand in your way. Like, if this is something you want to do, now let's see what else ultimately happens with Vic and the Eagles. But I don't know that let's wait and see. I'd be surprised, I guess, if, Andrew and Kevin Stefanski were like, no way, we're not going to let you go. Let's see ultimately how it develops. But like I said, if it were to go that route, I'm telling you, it's these guys who can take an offensive line, make your starters better, but then also develop younger players. I mean, they're rarer than hen's teeth in the NFL right now. And as this GM said to me, he was talking more about Philly and Stoutland, but again, he extended it to Callahan. He was like, look, it is such an immense advantage to have someone on your staff who can do that for you now. There's just you can't find enough of those guys to do that, and it just gives an overwhelming edge. And I cannot think of a team in the NFL who could use that more right now than the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, they'd have to pay whatever it is. I mean, there's no excuse to not pay it, right? No excuse.
Yeah, I agree, but there's not a lot of. I mean, that's expensive. That's a very, very. Now,
billionaires.
I don't know if there'd be
billionaires, Charles.
I look. I understand that. I mean, it comes down to your general manager and the owner. And I know it's to us, we're like, billionaires, $3 million a season, that's nothing. But I mean, I will tell you this: if Stoutland were someone who were on the market tomorrow, $5-6 million a year, there would be I think a handful of teams who would go, yep, absolutely, we'll pay him. We'll pay him like a coordinator, basically, to come in and be our offensive line coach right now because of how immense his impact would be. I don't think, to me, it's no question. But I'm also the guy who says if you have a great kicker, pay him $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year because they win games. But I think I'm in the minority.
Well, kickers turned out to be pretty important last weekend, Charles, as we saw in those games.
Yeah. You think? Yeah. So to me, I think I think if they hadn't moved on Callahan, I think David Tepper would have gone very hard in the paint for him in Carolina to try and add him. He fits the culture of what Tennessee's trying to do, in terms of, I think the idea of like making decisions jointly, the increased footing that Rand Carthon has in the organization now. He fits very, very much in that culture. It's funny because he's, when you talk to people in Cincinnati, he's not, I don't want to say power hungry, but he's not someone who's like, they don't perceive him as a guy who's going to go in and be like, hey, I got to be, every decision we got to, I'm going to make the final say, or I got to be involved in everything, or, everybody needs to listen to me. Like he's definitely more of the come to a consensus type of guy, which, okay, I mean, right, fits, and it's in a little bit, in a way, I don't want to say opposite of Vrabel, but certainly more open to the culture that I think ownership wants to build in Tennessee. So that makes a lot of sense to me. It's from the standpoint of how in demand he would have been, I think, had they waited it made sense to me that they moved on him pretty quickly, particularly with like Atlanta dragging along. Like, where's that going? Like, I thought by now Belichick would have been locked down. Carolina, I think, again, struggling a little bit in that search, although I think Dan Morgan being named the GM there helps them out. And so I think for Tennessee, it was, all right, we're going to screw around here, or if we feel like we have somebody who fits the culture, fits the GM, and could have the upside of adding another assistant down the line who could dramatically impact our offense and our offensive line, why are we going to wait around on this? Let's do it.
We'll have more with Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We continue our conversation with Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports. Charles, Jim Harbaugh officially hired by the LA Chargers. What do you make of that move of Harbaugh finally making his return to the NFL?
Well, first off, I'm glad we're going to talk about this because I caught the tail end of Joe citing Jim Comparoni, someone who he and I know very well, talking about the scourge of Jim Harbaugh, the college football. I'll drop you guys a little nugget here, and you can go ahead and you do a whole show on this someday. Very prominent college program, extremely prominent college program that was very silent on Harbaugh. Very silent on Connor Stallions. Very silent on this idea of, advanced scouting of opponents. And I, poke around, ask some people in the NFL, know people associated with this program, like, how come they're not saying anything? Kind of this, you always go to the big heads, right, in college, and you say, what do you think of this? How come they're not saying anything? Very solid number of people in the NFL said, well, they break down the all-22 at halftime of their games in order to get a scouting edge in college football games. Highly illegal. But you know what? It happens. And let me tell you something about Jim Harbaugh. And I went to Michigan State like Joe, right? Like I have my own set of feelings about Michigan football. I don't think I have the pure hatred that a lot of my other fellow alums have, but I have my own set of thoughts. That said, everybody's got to get over it. Okay, college football is no different than the NFL, where everybody is looking for every single edge they can. They do all kinds of nefarious stuff, most of which is far worse than sending somebody with a cell phone to record plays or signals or whatever else in college football. And the primary reason why most of these big-time coaches are pissed off about NIL and the transfer portal is because it removed the one significant advantage they had forever, which was a network of alumni who had already created NIL on their own under the table. Okay? So let's just go ahead and lay off Jim Harbaugh when it comes to that stuff and whatever comes out, because I can tell you right now, after spending years and years looking at college football programs, it's a whole big dirt pile, and everybody's got crap on them, and it's just how it is. And so this idea
except
that,
Vanderbilt.
You're right, except Vandy. Let's not touch Vandy. So I just wanted to make sure I point that out. And you guys go ahead and figure out what is the big-time college program that was utilizing the all-22 at halftime of games.
I love it.
Look, Harbs, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Chargers. So I was in the airport yesterday after this all came down. I was flying back to Houston, and immediately I get off the plane. I'm hitting guys up, and they're like, what do you think of this? Like, people close to Harbs. And, I talked to two guys really close to him, and one said, perfect fit. It's a very coach favorable situation, not so much GM favorable. Great coach job though in with the Chargers because of the roster and the quarterback and all these things. And the other one said, let's see, let's wait and see. And I was like, wow, okay. So what do you think? Like, you're not sure that Jim can come in and do a great job there? And he said, well, I want to see what happens. Let's see the staff he names. And he said, I think he's been a fantastic college coach, fit perfectly at Michigan over the expanse of his career, where he ultimately went with it, how he developed the offense there with Sharon Moore. He said, but I want to see how does he reinvent himself on the NFL level? Because when he departed the 49ers, the complexity of NFL defenses was not on the level that it is now. Like, NFL defenses are so much more complex than they were even 10 years ago. Like, it's insane, the number of things that defenses are doing now. And I think it led to the red zone problems that a lot of NFL teams had in compressed space and the dip in scoring and all these different things. When you talk to people across the league, they're like, hey, defenses is a hell of a lot better now. The play calling is a heck of a lot better. and it's just harder to deal with these, and the offense has now got to catch up in a multitude of different areas. So when Jim comes back, I almost wonder. He had some forward-thinking things that he did, obviously with the 49ers before he left. The Colin Kaepernick stuff, the gun offense. I mean, there was some different things that he did that I think were a little bit ahead of the curve. But then he goes back to college, and what does he do? He streamlines it back into a power running game, and basically says, okay, well, college football's going this direction. They're spreading it out. Lighter defense is faster. We're just going to beat the living crap out of teams and force them to stop us. And that's what's going to be the spine of our offense. Kind of taking it back to, look, it's like a Schembechler offense in some ways. And then, Sharon Moore, I think they opened it up a little bit when they got a competent quarterback and they were J.J. McCarthy. Well, let's see on the NFL level, because I think there's just sort of a curiosity. What's his staff going to look like? How is he going to call games? And what does he ultimately want to do? Offensively, on this level with the Chargers. I just think, I think there are even people close to him. We're like, let's see. This is wild. He's back. Can't do it the way he did it before. Going to have to, rebuild himself in some levels on the NFL, plateau, and let's see ultimately where he goes with it. So I don't think it's just an automatic that he's going to walk in and have the level of success. I will say this. I expect it to be a young general manager hire there, which is indicative that, the Spanos family, what they want is as a CEO head coach. He's going to come in. He's going to run the whole entire operation. He's going to be the guy. The buck's going to stop at Jim. And I think the general manager hire will reflect that.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. You mentioned Belichick, so we're trying to figure that out. But I also want to ask you about Mike Vrabel, Charles. His situation, I know it's Falcons, Panthers, has already interviewed previously with the Chargers, of course. Let me ask you this, because this comes from fans of the Titans in particular who don't like Vrabel, who are ready to just dance on the idea that he doesn't get a job. You were one of the people, a lot of the people in the NFL said the minute Mike Vrabel, he would have any pick of his jobs. Was that overstated a bit?
I don't think it was overstated. I think that when you look at, let's talk about a couple of these jobs. Atlanta, Arthur Blank was the worst kept secret in the NFL that his two candidates were Harbaugh and Belichick, that these were the two guys he absolutely wanted. And I still believe Belichick is the coach that he wants. And I think the reason that Belichick is not the coach with the Atlanta Falcons right now is because of Bill Belichick. And it makes me wonder if Bill is waiting for something. Like I can't get it out of my mind. I'm like, what is Bill doing? Like, is he waiting? Like, is there something out there? Does he think there's a chance that a job comes unexpectedly open after the Senior Bowl? Is he waiting for the Bills? Like, what is he doing? Why is he? I 100% believe that he's dragging his feet with the Falcons, and that's why the Falcons now are like, okay, we better do our due diligence with other candidates, because it's not a guarantee that we land Bill. As much as we say we've completed our interviews with Bill, the truth is Bill keeps interviewing us, and that's really where this stands. So I think that's one thing with the Falcons. I think the Chargers were 100% on Harbaugh all the way. I think from the start, that was another one where we're just like, okay, like they're Don Yee's talking to the Chargers nonstop. It's not just trying to pry more money out of Michigan, although maybe this idea of protections, and he'll go back if they get a show cause, they won't fire him, they'll protect his money, they'll ride out the storm with him. Maybe, that was real with Michigan, but there was no doubt in my mind the Chargers were all 100% on board. Once we get past that, what's the great job, Joe? Robby, like what's the great, Washington, right? That's potentially, I think Washington's a great, yeah, absolutely. Washington's a great job, but what have we all heard from the start with Washington? Ben Johnson. From the start, Ben Johnson. They want Ben Johnson. That's their guy. They are going to wait until everything's over, and they're going to take their big shot at Ben Johnson. And if that ultimately doesn't work out, then they will start to consider other legitimate candidates. But that they want to draft a quarterback at 2. They want to bring in Ben Johnson. They want to start out a studs rebuild with him and align him with the quarterback. Okay, so that to me is the one other job that's really. So if you're Mike Vrabel, I'll ask you, if the Falcons are chasing after Belichick this hard and he's jerking them around at this stage, and the Washington's all in on Ben Johnson, what job would you want if you're Mike Vrabel? You tell me. Would you rather go, let me sit out a cycle and see what happens? Let's see what develops next year. What you tell me, what other job is out there where you're like, yeah, Mike should chase that job and really want it a lot?
Well,
it sure as hell ain't the Panthers.
Yeah, well, he's interviewing, but yeah, I mean, I'd be there's a lot of reasons to be hesitant in the Panthers. I still think Bryce Young could be good, but obviously we'll see. But they have so many issues starting at the top. And the Seahawks, I think, could be a decent job. So I don't know.
Okay,
is that a Dan Quinn job?
There you go. I mean, the Seahawks, that is the one that I had someone say, like, don't discount, as this wears on, Mike potentially ending up with the Seahawks. Now, the two complications there are you mentioned one, Dan Quinn, like a lot of people in the organization still have a lot of love for Dan, including John Schneider. Makes a lot of sense in terms of the fit, the comfortability. Schneider knows he can work with Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn interviews well. I mean, he's been a second place finisher in other jobs, and so I think there is an element there of Dan Quinn. And then number two, I think the complication is it's Schneider. Jody Allen, who's the chair of the Seahawks now, Paul Allen's sister, who basically took over the team when he passed, has looked at John and said, John, it's your organization now. So when Pete Carroll departed, which was under duress, it was because she wanted to turn it over to John and say, you are the supreme leader now of the Seahawks, and you're running everything. You're going to hire the coach. You're going to have the power now. The power is in the hands of the general manager. We're going to have a very linear organization, which is going to be me to the general manager to the head coach. Is that what Mike wants? And if, beyond that, does John want to go, okay, I have Dan, who I'm very interested in, who I have a past with and a level of comfort with, or do I want to go with Mike, who is, not quite the same level of knowing him? Mike wants, again, and we've talked about this before, Mike wants to be able to have a hand in an expansive area of a franchise. I don't think he wants to walk in and go, okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and be the coach here, and I'll be told who my players are going to be, and I'm not going to be able to weigh in on things that I want to weigh in on. That was part of the problem, I think, ultimately in Tennessee. So is he going to get out of Tennessee and then go somewhere else where he doesn't have ultimately what he's searching for, or would you rather sit out a cycle, see where things go? The only thing with Carolina, which, I think Dan Morgan getting the job in Carolina is their best plus for potentially being able to land Mike Vrabel, because Dan Morgan has been through, when you look at his career, like he was in Buffalo when they built Buffalo into what they are. He was in Seattle for a long time, when Seattle really built that organization into what it was. And I think Mike and Dan are very similar individuals. Like, if you've ever spent time with Dan Morgan, you'd be like, yeah, I could see how Mike and Dan would work really well together. That's probably the best thing that the Carolina Panthers have going for them. I don't know that John Schneider and Mike Vrabel are really similar guys. I don't, just from, spending time with John here and there over the last, 15 years. So, in a weird way, Carolina and Dan Morgan almost align better, although I think the ownership to me is still I don't know why you would want to go. I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people I don't know why you'd want to go there and work for that owner, but who you work with means a lot. And I think it's a better fit, oddly enough, minus the owner, with the general manager in Carolina than it would be in Seattle. I still think I would not be surprised if Vrabel ends up sitting out this cycle and seeing what pops up next year.
Well, Charles, really good stuff as always, man. Appreciate so much you taking time to be with us this morning, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Tell Joe, stop bringing up Jim Comparoni on broadcast, man. What are you doing?
At least we got through a show without you ripping Mitch album. I mean, that's a win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you want to go into the next segment?
No.
We can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Oh, man.
Right,
thank you, Charles.
See you, man.
Appreciate it. Charles Robinson, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. With a lot to get to there from what Charles had to say. We'll react to that next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls. Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Make sure you check out 94.9 The Fan on Sunday for Vanderbilt women's basketball. Commodores on the road, taking on South Carolina. Tip-off at 2 o'clock, pregame beginning at 1:45. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us. What did you make of what Charles had to say about Vrabel there, Joe, and the ongoing search for a job? By the way, Vrabel completed another interview with Atlanta yesterday and apparently is interviewing with Carolina in person today.
Yeah, look, I think I mostly agree with what Charles said there, right? Vrabel, it's not like you have to take any job that's offered to you. This was a loaded coaching cycle. Very interesting stuff on Atlanta. You know, there's different stuff coming out of Atlanta that's more like maybe the Falcons aren't sure, but I think what Charles said makes a lot of sense in terms of, and there's been a lot of talk about Rich McKay, just the power structure, all that stuff with Belichick, but it's a loaded coaching cycle, and I've never thought Vrabel was just going to take any head coaching job. Again, Mike Vrabel has done more than enough to try to get a job, which is often in the contract language in these situations where he has this money that he is going to get paid, and it's going to be a lot of money by Amy Adams Strunk if he doesn't work this fall. So the sitting out a year, waiting to see what happens next cycle, I mean, I've always thought that was possible for sure. I very much thought it was possible from the very start of this. But if he doesn't get a job, then the especially the Vrabel haters are definitely going to dance on that for sure. It's just, I think it's a little bit overstated. But I also think it has been by some people a little bit overstated about Mike Vrabel as Vince Lombardi. You know, Mike Vrabel's a good coach. There is no doubt. But, I mean, no doubt in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
But, you know, like someone said on the text line, 2 bad seasons, bad offenses. You know, you look at the whole thing that happened with Amy Adams Strunk, and you can take one side or the other, but the bottom line is it did happen. Is Vrabel completely free of blame? Vrabel can be prickly. Vrabel can be difficult. So all those things are factors too. I do wonder if Carolina can actually make a case for him to consider that job. It's going to be very interesting. Now, another other thing, but that Charles said that I thought was really interesting is all the Bill Callahan stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, if all of it, the Browns not letting him go, ridiculous to me. The Titans not paying him, whatever it is, also would be ridiculous. Especially if he's that high, and he is. I mean, he's been one of the best offensive line coaches in the sport of football for going on 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been consistent, demonstrated success with him coaching the offensive line. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I mean, look, I would assume, I don't think that, you know, he's come out and said this, and I guess as he probably won't today at the press conference, but we'll see, that Brian Callahan wants his father to be with him on the staff and coach on the offensive line. So if that's the case, I mean, it's going to be an interesting theory. I mean, you know, PK yesterday, Joe brought up like the old school guys think it's a formality that'll happen. And maybe some of the newer school coaches think, I don't know. I mean, it's a pretty good asset that the Browns have there. I mean, I'm with you from the standpoint of, I mean, Bill Callahan at his age, I don't really anticipate him being held hostage by anybody at, you know, any organization that way. But, you know, if Cleveland just absolutely won't give him up, I do wonder what that means for Bill Callahan and what his response to that would be.
I know what mine would be. It would be double middles. You know, okay, I'm going to go enjoy my lazy boy. But, you know, yeah, we'll see how that works out. Another interesting point to bring up on all that, you know, he mentioned Jeff Stoutland. And as I've said, I covered him a long time. He's an amazing coach. And, boy, what an interview that guy is. But Jeff Stoutland, Charles talking $5-6 million and what he does. Let's also keep in mind, this is actually another great example of the limitations at work here too, right? Because Jeff Stoutland had Andre Dillard for multiple years. He didn't start him. He lost his starting job. He's a first-round pick. He came here. He was bad. So there's still limitations. Like, you can be the greatest position coach in the history of, like, whoever the greatest, you know, receivers coach in the history of football, I will go out there right now and I will suck at receiver. I don't care what you do to coach me up, okay? So I mean, there's still limitations. That's a failed project that was supposed to be, a ready plug-and-play first-round pick. That still happens. So the idea, that applies. Bill Callahan comes here. He's the offensive line coach. You don't just assume that every single offensive lineman who rolls through is going to become a great player. It's just a good reminder of the limitations at hand.
Coming up next, it's time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Be the first caller, 615-737-1025. If you guess the goal scorer for the Preds tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that coming up next. Give our final thoughts on Brian Callahan as he prepares for his introductory press conference today with the Titans as well. All that coming up. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's time for Preds Picks to click.
And a shot at the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Preds tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Visit tjandersonhomes.com to see why they are preferred so often. It's Pick to Click, now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is that time of the day, time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode, presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Preds back in action tonight, taking on the Minnesota Wild on the road. No change to the standings in Preds Pick to Click. Rexrode still in first place with 12 correct answers. The listeners in second place with 11. Nick Keyser with 7. And I remain with a lowly 3 in the competition. With that in mind, let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Kevin. Kevin, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to have to go with Philip Forsberg.
Going with Forsberg. Kevin, thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joe, I don't know that we've had anybody this year. We probably have. I could go back and look. When I've been first, not take Philip Forsberg. With that in mind, I'm going to go Ryan O'Reilly. So Forsberg, O'Reilly off the board. Rexrode, your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
All right. Well, I'll just stick with that line. This is the line that people should be revolving around. So give me Gus Nyquist.
Nick Keyser, the top line off the board. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, they are, but I have to make a small note to our callers. So if you want to keep doing this, you can if you want to. Other people can just win a lot more often. The last 5 callers now have gone with Forsberg, and only one of you have hit. So just
20%.
Just want to throw that out there.
When I'm pleading for a caller to take Luke Shen.
Yeah.
Somebody, I guess, right?
When I'm first, callers, do not take Forsberg. Bad percentages.
Just letting you know. Just because you think he's an elite goal scorer doesn't mean he is in the Robby and Rexrode's.
Jeez. Now he's calling out Forsberg.
Forsberg. Okay. I like it.
Just saying.
Keep going.
My pick is going to be Luke Evangelista this evening. I think that the young guys are on notice, and I think that he gets on the board tonight against John Hines.
Wow.
All right.
Evangelista. So the selections, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Evangelista. Preds Pick to Click presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Another John Hines game tonight. Joe Rexrode. This is one the Predators need to have. I said it yesterday on Preds Insiders. So they've got Minnesota coming up tonight. You go back on the road, got a 3-game road trip coming up. I think they need to get 2 out of these next 3 if you're the Predators. They got Edmonton on Saturday, which that is going to be a tall task with the way that Edmonton is playing right now, winners of 14 in a row.
They got to lose at some point.
Ottawa on Monday. So they do have to lose at some point. We'll see if the Predators can be responsible for that. By the way, it looks like Corey Perry might make his Edmonton Oilers debut against the Predators on Saturday. So
of course he will.
Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? But big one tonight for the Preds.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's and they've been struggling. A little payback, by the way, because last time it looked like a little Hines bump was coming, and so payback there, important game. And I'm with you. I think at least 3 of 6 points. It's not disastrous on this trip, but I would say that'd be the minimum.
Joe, your final thoughts as we prepare for the introductory press conference of Brian Callahan coming up today. What do you think we're going to hear from Brian Callahan? What do you make of just the situation around the Titans right now with Rand Carthon and the promotion that he received yesterday as well?
Well, hopefully he'll tell us exactly how much the Titans are going to pay his dad to come be offensive line coach.
Yes.
Andrew
down to the cent.
Andrew from Dover asked me an exact question to ask. He said, Will Levis shows a lot of leadership potential to do well in this league. How do you plan to bring out the best of him and help him become one of the elite quarterbacks in this league? This is what Andrew from Dover wants me to ask. I'm sorry, Andrew. My question is going to be, do you prefer Ranahan or Callahan? That is my question. It's a hot debate on Titans Twitter. Yeah, I do too. It works better than Ray Ran or whatever we were doing there. It flows much easier. I assume that was part of the hire of Brian Callahan. Yeah, exactly. But I think the offense, Levis, all these questions, in all seriousness, are a big part of this for sure. Obviously, his thought on the play calling, why it has worked. What is there any trepidation? Is there still the unknown in his mind, just in terms of him as a play caller? Is he calling plays? That's, by the way, that would be good to get that confirmation either way and calling plays. And again, I think the coaching staff question for him and for Rand Carthon is interesting. Is Rand just checks and balances? Oversight of the coaching staff, what does that mean? Those are a few things that come to the top of the mind.
I can't wait to see how many times we hear the word collaboration take place today. It's going to be awesome. Looking forward to the word count on that. Joe, I'm taking off to Disney World, so I'll see you on Wednesday.
Heck yes! And by the way, we're getting Brian Callahan on the show tomorrow, so I want you and the fam to call in, and you guys can maybe Allison get a question for Brian Callahan. How about that?
That's right.
There we go.
Paul Kuharsky going to be in for me the next few days. That does it for us today on the program. Chasing Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.